everyone. It's good to be with you. What a lovely week it's been, eh? Some glorious weather this week. I don't know, what have you done with this glorious weather this week? It was that bit about Tuesday where I went, I will not moan about the warm and the heats. I will not. I've been waiting for summer for a long time. I will not moan about it. This is when we know we're British. When we spend all winter moaning and waiting for the summer, and the summer comes and we go, oh, it's too hot. With the beautiful weather this week, we've spent some time eating as much as we can in the garden. I don't know about you, but there's something about the warm weather that makes me go, ooh, I want to eat outside. I think it comes from my dad, because as children, the moment there was a bit of warm weather, my dad said, either let's go have a picnic or let's have dinner outside. As a teenager, it was something that I constantly moaned and groaned about. But as an adult, I'm like, hey, I say to my kids, oh, the weather's nice. Let's eat outside. There's something wonderful about eating in the garden. I don't know about you. I love to relax, enjoy the company of whether it's my immediate family or friends at a meal around the table. Whether it's dinner at home, dinner in the garden, a barbecue with friends, or a picnic by the river, it's great to eat with others, isn't it? The other Saturday, we had a ladies' afternoon tea. I think there was 20 of us in the end. We sat in the garden. We ate scones with cream on them and plenty of other stuff. But I think the scones with the cream were one of my highlights. And we enjoyed one another's company around food. There's something about eating together that is good. Yes, for some of us, we might say, actually, but eating together with certain people might bring conflict and might bring strife, but there's something good about us eating together. Being with one another, gathering around food, gathering around celebration of just, hey, it's another meal. Gathering to eat together. And as I look through the Gospels and as we read the Gospels, we often see Jesus eating. We often find Jesus reclined at a table or with his disciples walking along and eating. We find him quite often eating. Or as we read the accounts, we find that food is somehow implied. Even if it doesn't say and Jesus ate, the scene is a meal, or there seems to be some implication that food would have somehow been involved in sharing a meal, in sharing food together. In Jesus' day, being invited to a meal expressed a deepening of friendship, intimacy, unity, as people gathered around food. We realize that many of the Jewish feasts would have had that element of eating together. And Jesus not only ate with his disciples, like when they picked grain from the grain field, his disciples, as they went, they shared meals in the houses of friends like Mary and Martha. But Jesus not only ate with his disciples, he ate with those that others around him rejected. He ate with those who would have been considered as undesirables, like tax collectors. And we get this phrase so often, he's eating with sinners. Whoever these people were, others looked upon them and said, they're rejected by us, they're outcasts, they are sinners. Yet we see Jesus extend grace and friendship. Remember as he met Zacchaeus on the road. He's like, hey, Zacchaeus, come down. Come down from that tree. Why? Because I'm coming to your house. I'm coming to your house. As kids, there used to be a song that I've forgotten how it went, but it was like, I remember it saying, because I'm coming to your house for tea, dum dum, because I'm coming to your house for tea, or something like that. There was a tune to it, but I don't remember the tune. I just remember the beat. Jesus eating, and we realize that as we read the parables that Jesus told as well, so often they too revolved around feasting and food. As he talked about wedding feasts and feasts among people and invitations to feasts and beggars being fed. You kind of go, hey, hang on a minute. A lot of the Gospels revolve around food. Jesus is the center of a giant picnic on more than one occasion. Hey, Jesus liked picnics too. And Jesus used these meal times to teach people. He used these meal times to share with them, to share something of what God is like, the heart of the Father, as he ate with people, as he took time to be with them. We see how he takes time, doesn't he, to be with his disciples and his friends before he's betrayed, as he also initiates then another meal for them to have in remembrance of him, that we still participate in. He ate food after his resurrection on more than one occasion. And as we get to the end of the book of John, we find him barbecuing, having a barbecue picnic, I think you'd describe it, a breakfast on the beach with his disciples. And today we're going to start a new series, and this new series together is called Dinner with Jesus. As we begin to look through the Gospels, we find a lot of dinner with Jesus, but we picked perhaps six moments where Jesus eats with people, that I'm going to invite us to do perhaps a little bit of a dig in, to have a look in, to see what will we learn from Jesus as he eats with people. As we recall these times, you will realize over the weeks that these often are accounts in the Gospels that are familiar to us. But I'm going to invite us to take a look. To take a look at what we learn. And to think about how it is that we invite others around the table as well, as we share meals with others. What is it that we can implement, can talk about, can expect as we invite Jesus in? So today we kick off Dinner with Jesus with one of Jesus' first perhaps recorded miracles in John chapter 2. Well, it's his first miracle in John chapter 2. And the setting is a feast, a wedding feast in Cana. And although the text doesn't tell us that Jesus ate, he was at a wedding. There was a master of the banquets, so I'm assuming there was a banquet. And as you probably already have guessed, wine ran out. So there was a banquet and there was wine and Jesus was invited. So even though it doesn't tell us Jesus ate, I think there's an implication here that Jesus had dinner. That he ate. And John chapter 2 begins with the words, on the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. We see that this almost feels like the writer John is joining it to what happens for us in the previous chapter. We realise that these chapters were putting afterwards, and it's just natural breaking stories to help us to be able to find where we're going. So we realise that it's on the third day. And if we look back in John chapter 1, we keep finding that John, as he hits the end of John chapter 1, keeps going, and the next day, and the next day. And then we get to John chapter 2, and he says, and on the third day. These things seem to happen perhaps one after the other in some kind of way. So what happens in John chapter 1? Well, in the previous chapter, we read how Jesus meets his disciples, a number of them. How he invites Philip, come follow me. We get this excitement as brothers are off telling others, oh, hey, I found the Messiah. I found the one. Come and see him. So here Jesus is already gathering those who would follow him, his disciples. So we read as we come to this account that not only is Jesus invited to this wedding, his mother is also there. Maybe it's a family friend, who knows? Maybe it's somebody in that community. But Jesus is there, Jesus' mother is there, and the disciples, it says, are invited as well. So we've got a number of people that we're going to know that are invited to this wedding. So let's read this account from John chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. It says this. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine had gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Woman, why do you involve me? Jesus replied, my hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Nearby stood 12 stone water jars, the kind used by Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 80 to 120 litres. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, so they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquets. They did so. And the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, although the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, they went down to Capernaum with his mother and brothers and his disciples, and there they stayed for a few days. What a great account, hey? The first thing as we engage with this passage, as I've already pointed out, is that Jesus wasn't just at this wedding by accident or chance. A number of times as we read the gospel, we realize that sometimes it says Jesus is going somewhere, that he comes across people and things happen. That people meet him, people come to him. But on this occasion, we find that Jesus is not at this wedding by accident or by chance. He's there by invitation. He's been invited. He's been invited, and so has his disciples and his mother. They were there by invitation. Invitation from those getting married and their families. The fact that Jesus is invited, I think, tells us something about Jesus. Because the fact that Jesus is invited here at the beginning of his ministry, he's yet to perform a miracle. He's not well known at this point, but yet he's invited. Jesus was the type of person that you wanted to invite to your wedding. It tells us something about the kind of person Jesus was. He was someone you wanted to be with you as you celebrated. Jesus was welcomed. And as I think about this and how Jesus was welcomed to this wedding, he was not there by chance or by accident. He was invited to come. I wonder what would it be for me and you to invite Jesus in to the significant events of our lives. But not just to invite him into the significant events of our lives, but invite him into the everyday eating with him, being with him. Jesus was there, sharing with those around about him the celebration. What is it? What would it be to invite Jesus in? To welcome him in. To welcome him as we sit at our tables each and every day to eat our food. What is it to invite Jesus into the space next to us? Jesus, would you come? And would you eat with me? Would you dine with me? Would you share in the very ordinary task of eating? Just as we invite others into our company, that we would invite him into our company. Jesus was invited, he was welcomed. Because when you invite Jesus in, anything can happen. I think this story shows us this. When we invite Jesus in, anything can happen. The second thing I think we notice as I would like to draw us attention to as we engage with this passage is the wise advice of Jesus' mother. The wise advice she gives the servants. We see how Jesus' mother comes to Jesus and says, hey, there's no more wine. It's kind of a moment you're kind of, what do you want me to do about it? It's almost like she comes and she shares with him. We don't know, is she expectant that somehow that he would do something? I think by his response, he kind of feels that his mother is expecting something. Because he doesn't respond to her, oh, that's interesting. He responds to her and he says, woman, why do you involve me? I think as we read that, sometimes we read, woman, why do we involve you? Sometimes that phrase woman can kind of often can be, oh, woman, why did we hear it in that kind of tone, maybe with a slight disrespect. But actually, as we read the gospel, we don't see it in that way at all. He simply addresses her. He addresses her in a way that my understanding is that it would have carried a respect rather than being rough or discourteous. There was a respect as he addresses his mother. But he asks her, why do you involve me? He must have sensed the fact that his mother is wanting him to do something. He says, my hour's not yet come. His mother is wanting him to do something. And then before he's even said, okay, Okay, I will do something. She turns to the servants and gives them some great advice. It's this: do whatever he tells you. There's an expectation on her part that Jesus is about to do something. And not only is he going to do something, it's going to be something great. Because she says to the servants, do whatever he tells you. What wise advice. What wise advice for us too. That when we hear the voice of Jesus, when we read the scripture, that we do whatever he tells us. Do whatever he tells you. When we invite Jesus into the events of our everyday. When we invite Jesus into our homes, into the mundane, into the ordinary, into the eating and the sharing of a meal. May we too heed the advice of Jesus' mother. Do whatever he tells you. May we be those who obediently follow the Master. May we obediently follow Jesus, doing whatever he tells us to do. As we open the word and as we read and as we understand the type of life and the type of people that we are called to be, the way that we are called to live, may we do what he calls us to do. May we live how he calls us to live. And as Jesus tells these servants to fill the jars, what I love is the fact that we get this lovely little detail that Jesus says to them, fill the jars with water. So the servants, who his mother has said, do whatever he tells you. Not only fill the jars with water, but they fill them to the brim. Parents, have you ever asked your children to do something? And you say to them something like, hey, well, I can imagine it would happen in my house. Fill that bucket with water. And what would happen? It would be 2/3 full, and they would say, I've done it. It would have been easy for the servants to have half-heartedly done the job, to have filled them kind of, almost full. But I love this little detail that these servants filled these water jars to the brim. There was no room for anything else to be added. These water jars were filled to the brim. No half-heartedness, fully in, doing what Jesus had told them and instructed them to do, to fill the jars with water. So they were filled to the brim. There was no room for any more. Then Jesus tells them to take some of the water. He says, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. And they did so. You know what? It would have taken obedience at that point. They knew what they had filled those water jars. That's the word I'm looking for. They knew what they would have filled those water jars with. They knew that they had filled them to the brim, so there wasn't room for anything else. And now Jesus says, I want you to take some out and I want you to take it to the master of the banquets. And here they do. They take this water to the master of the banquet. It must have taken faith to draw it and to take it with confidence. Because they had taken time to fill those jars with water. 80 to 120 litres of water. That's a lot of water. This isn't just a task they've done in a second and kind of forgotten about it and carried on. This is a task that's taken time and taken commitment to do. To fill these jars with water. To fill them to the brim. Not half-hearted, but fully in there, with time and commitment. And now Jesus tells them to take this water to the master of the banquets. That would have taken faith, obedience to do so. But what we read is as the master of the banquet tastes this, it's no longer water that they filled the jars in. It's now wine, but not just any wine, the best. Excellent wine. As we invite Jesus in, may we not only heed the advice of Mary to do whatever he tells us, but as we invite Jesus into our everyday, may we follow his instructions with diligence, with commitment, giving our very best. That when Jesus says to do something, we don't do it half-hearted, but we do it all the way. That we commit ourselves. Because at times doing what Jesus has called us to do takes time and it takes dedication. It's not over like that. Commitment to keep going. It must have been points as they filled those jars with water, it felt like hard work. But they had commitment to keep on going. May we have commitment to keep on going even when it feels hard to obey what the Master tells us to do. To do a most excellent job. And when he tells us to do things that sometimes we're like, hey, that takes faith. May we step out in faith. Like those servants who took that wine that they had drawn and took it to the master of the banquet, presented it to him. Because in that moment, if that master of the banquet had just tasted water, they would have been in trouble. Yet they took this water that had been turned into wine to the master of the banquet, presented it to him, and it was the most excellent of wine. And my final thought as we look at this chapter, as we look at this account, the final thing I want to draw our attention to in this passage is this miracle. Because Jesus turns water into the very best wine. Wine of excellent quality. And the thought is this, it's simple. If Jesus can turn water into wine, he can do anything. And I love the fact that as the master of the banquet takes the bridegroom aside, he's like, hey, you saved the best till last. And as I think about this, I'm like, Lord, I thank you that the best is still yet to come. That you've not finished with me yet. That Jesus, that you can take this life. And just as you turned water into wine, you can take this life, my life, our lives, and you can transform us to be the people that you called us to be. When we simply obey, that we would be transformed. If Jesus can turn water into wine, then Jesus can do anything. As over the last few weeks, I've been thinking about this series coming up with Dinner with Jesus. One of my prayers has been, Lord, even around our home, in our family, around our dinner table, God, would you break in and do something amazing? Would even as we invite you into the everyday of our family life, God, would you come and would you bring change and transformation within each of us? May we see a move of your spirit within our home like we've never seen before. And I want to pray that for you as well. That in your home, may you see the move of the spirit like you've never seen before. As you obediently follow Jesus, as you invite him into your everyday, into your Monday, may you see a move of the spirit in your life. in your circumstances, in the home, in your home, within your friendship groups, as you eat and you congregate round food with others. May it be that the conversation turns to Jesus. And as you invite him in, could it be that our faith is raised, that we can go, Jesus, I'm expecting anything. Because you can do anything. You can do even the impossible. Because who's ever heard of water becoming wine? It's not possible. In its natural state, it is not possible for water to become wine. They are two completely different things. Yet Jesus turns water into wine. With Jesus, what may feel like it's impossible, those areas where you're like, Lord, I need a breakthrough, but it feels like it's going to be impossible. Oh, that he would surprise us in the most wonderful way. As Jesus' mother said to Jesus, the wine is run out, I wonder what she expected. But I'm sure of this, that whatever she expected, Jesus went far beyond whatever she thought Jesus might be able to do. She asked knowing that he was able. Not knowing the how and the what it would look like, but knowing that he was able. And this morning we come knowing he's able. God wants to share life with us. He wants to be our companion in our days. Yes, he's the miracle working God. But he also wants to be the one who gets his feet under the table and sits in our kitchen, so to speak, and joins us in the everyday. So I have a challenge, if you like, an invitation for this next week. And it would be this. This week, as you sit around your meal tables, if you're with family, talk to them. If you're in friends, talk to them. If you're on your own, spend some time. Open this passage again and take a look. That's my invitation to you this week. Take a moment this week at some point around the meal table, whether on your own or with friends or with family, to open this passage and to remind yourself of this passage. To once again, to invite Jesus in and welcome him to your table. To take a moment to listen to what Jesus is speaking to you about and to obediently follow. And to expect Jesus to move. As you either spend time reflecting or in time just in discussion with others around your table. Because anything can happen when we invite Jesus to our table. Let's take a moment now. And I don't know what it is that this morning you need to bring to Jesus, that you need to invite him into again. Sometimes it's that we kind of go, Lord, you are invited into every part of my life because I've given my life to you. But sometimes as we look and survey our lives, we realize that there are the odd thing, or those things that we're perhaps holding back. This morning, would you once again say to Jesus, Jesus, I welcome you in. You are welcomed into my life in every part. So Jesus, we welcome you into our lives. We know that you are there by your Spirit with us. But we want to say again that, Lord, may there be no part of our lives that is untouched by you, where you do not have a say. Would you speak into every area of our lives? And help us as we hear your voice speaking to us to act obediently. This week and beyond. But this week, God, as we come, we think about our meal tables. May whoever we share a meal with this week help us to intentionally bring you into the conversation, to welcome you into every conversation, into every discussion, into every sharing of a meal with others. Would you move in our homes? Would you have your place? Would you take your place as Lord, the one who reigns within our homes? Have your way in us, we pray.